Okay, great. Hi, everybody. I'm Emily Daigle. Thank you so much for joining me. Always an honor when people choose to hang out with you. It was kind of a grab bag. I didn't know if anyone, I thought I'd be like the kid in the cafeteria with nobody at the table, but this is wonderful. I did go over the last session, so I'm going to talk really quickly so I can try to hit all my points. I have a surprise guest speaker, Lynette's here, just to touch upon one of our accommodations. My message today really is all about universal design. So I'm going to challenge you all to try to come into this. I know everyone's feeling pretty overwhelmed, especially in the remote learning environment. There are some components of that that have actually made some of our tools, I think, more accessible and more universally friendly. I think about how far we've come since March, even as a staff with our own tech abilities, how far parents have come, how far kids have come. We've been really living in this space, not out of choice. And I think our learning curve has been fast and furious, and I think everybody's done a really good job with that. I'm not going to have you guys all say hello just because of time, but thank you for your time. It looks like, again, I have a great heterogeneous mix of wonderful school personnel in front of me. So I am going to just get started and share my screen. Emily Markham, I happen to see your face, so once it's up, I'm just going to ask you to unmic and you can tell me if you can actually see it. And I am recording, so hopefully everybody is comfortable with that. So I am going to share my screen, except that I just hit the wrong button here. Entire screen. Great. Great. And Emily, can you see a PowerPoint?
I sure can.
Okay, super. We have a weird split screen going on. It was doing it last time. We're going to ignore it. I don't know why it's doing that. So today is really about how to feel more confident as a differentiation master, right? And really learning some differences between accommodations and modifications, and then getting into some of the ones that I call low-hanging fruit that I would encourage you to treat as universal design, and then some of our what I call showstoppers, the ones that really tend to throw people logistically for a loop, kind of that, how the heck am I supposed to get this done with all these individual learners? So right now, our district average hovers right around the state average, 15 and change, give or take, for special ed identification. So we have quite a number of learners that are unique in your classrooms, on top of certainly your 504 students, your L students. So really a quick dive just into the difference between accommodation and modification. Most of you probably know this, but I think it's important to start here because I do still hear the words used interchangeably quite often. An accommodation is a tool in a toolkit. Right? These are things where, it's a non-discrimination policy, both 504 and IEP, where we need to make sure we're giving kids with unique learning profiles equal access. That's what it's all about. So they're both legally mandated. It's not a choice. A teacher might disagree, and maybe we'll loop back to this, but maybe even have some data to suggest an accommodation isn't needed. Great. We can discuss it as a team. But if it's in the plan, it's not a choice. It is something that the child's legally entitled to. Tools would be anything that gives you access to the same curricular expectations that everybody else has. So the content isn't changing, but you're giving things like a graphic organizer, a study guide, notes, supplementary visuals, extended time, chunking work, scaffolding long-term assignments. Those are all accommodations. Modifications live in the camp of actually changing curricular expectations, right? So you've decided as a team through an IEP, this is no longer the 504 world, that a child really is significantly behind and thus requires different expectations in what their understanding is going to be. I am a huge fan still of UBD, understanding by design. Any of you have been around a while know about that. That's where you start at the end of your unit and work backwards, right? So if 90% of my class is going to know these 8 things by the end of my unit, and then I have these unique learners, these are their big takeaways, I can then strip everything back to really just making sure they understand those core contents or components from the curriculum. That is a modification, right? We have a different expectation for those learners, and those learners require some level of specialized or individualized instruction to get there. Okay. I am going to plow through. If you guys have questions as I'm talking, you can pop them into that chat, and hopefully we'll have a few minutes at the end to loop back to those. So if you look really quickly, I did a quick IEP audit and I wrote down like the 10 to 12 most common IEP accommodations that we see. They're all here. I'm going to hit pause for 20 seconds because I know you can all read. Just take a look at this list. We very often get a laundry list of IEP accommodations, 504 accommodations. I really try very hard in our meetings to challenge the team and parents to understand, and it is usually the parent side, that a Chinese menu of options really doesn't benefit the child. It's much better to have a plan with like 2 to 3 accommodations that the kiddo really needs that are really critical to their access. Checking off everything because it sounds great or sounds nice really overwhelms teachers, I think. You get these lengthy plans and they're kind of look the same for a lot of kids. And it really doesn't tell you what the child really needs to address their learning deficits. I love that idea of working smarter, not harder. I would venture and challenge you to look at this list and find one thing that can't either be considered just good instruction and good practice, or that couldn't be embedded as a universal design. Copy of notes is a great example. We see this a lot now. We're also living in a virtual world. We have Google Classroom. If you as a teacher put your notes in each day into your Google Classroom, you have met this accommodation for anybody that has it, and you're providing a great tool for anybody who might want to use it, whether or not they have a plan. I would argue that with, again, everything on this list. I don't know any teams right now who aren't posting homework. Supplementary visuals, that might be a formula bank in math. It might be an example. Again, most of you guys do this all the time. You're already doing it. It is our legal obligation to offer these. If students are not taking advantage or accessing them, that is something we document and we can discuss as a team. But if you're meeting your obligation and you have these things in a folder in your Google Classroom, you are, in my opinion, you're taking care of, in all honesty, about 90% of your accommodations right out of the gate if you just get in that habit and that practice. I don't know many middle schoolers who don't benefit, or who can't benefit from a graphic organizer for a writing assignment. Chunking long-term assignments, providing a study guide, posting routines, having clear expectations, checking in for understanding. I would argue that those are all tier 1 interventions that, I would hope are in place already. There should never really be that feeling of gotcha at a meeting. And we have some parents or advocates that I think unfortunately kind of bring that flavor to the table. If these things are already in place for all learners, oh, Mrs. Daigle, my son has check-in for understanding. Yes, I do that with all my students. It's an essential part of good instruction. And here's the evidence of that, right? After I give a prompt, to the whole room, we're checking in, I'm checking those assignments. That's why I give homework. Homework is a check-in for understanding, right? That's the purpose of those quick assessments. While my child has posted routines in their IEP. Again, that's a district expectation whenever we present a lesson, that we have those clear lesson expectations and objectives posted for all learners. You're already doing it. So I think looking through that lens of universal design helps with some of that. I think feeling overwhelmed by the number of accommodations that a lot of our kids have. If you look through their plans, I think, again, these are the most common ones in every IEP I checked. So treating those like universal designs, I think, is a good approach for managing them. If you have students with alternative seating, obviously right now in the virtual world, that's a moot point for anything that's outside of your classroom. If you're an RLE teacher, this isn't even something is on your radar right now. If you're an in-person hybrid teacher, understanding what that means for your student doesn't always mean right up front center. Sometimes it means near the door because they use the bathroom frequently or take breaks. Sometimes it just means away from distraction. Extended time, I think, is almost a nice, again, COVID has been a little more conducive to this. If you have those opportunities for asynchronous learning, for afternoon session, if kids aren't finished, we are functioning in a block schedule now, so kids have a lot of time to do work, but if they need extra time still, There's no longer that piece of paper that you're trying to put in their binder and they're going off to a learning lab, 3 periods later and finding it and working on it again. Everything's right in the Google Classroom. They can pick up where they left off and hit submit when they're done. And then I always say in meetings, time and a half is a really good benchmark for extended time. If you're finding open-ended accommodations, ask the case manager or the guidance counselor and see if you can get it quantified. An open deadline usually isn't very good for anybody. For our kiddos who procrastinate, they just kind of let everything build up to the end of the quarter, and that's a mess for everybody and certainly not helpful to the child. And for our perfectionists, they tend to not turn it in because they want to keep working on it. So time and a half is a really great rule of thumb. I work really hard, and the team, special ed team does as well, to remember that when we're writing the accommodations. The more specific, the better. But if you feel like it's too global and needs to be looked at, bring it up certainly as a team or with your team. So the showstoppers, there's 2 biggies.
Sorry, I had a question. Do you want questions at the end or in the middle?
No, you can pop in. That's fine. I just can't see anybody. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. My question was, if I heard you correctly, what you were saying is that when students in the remote school complete an assessment, they should be doing it during their learning lab. So I guess my question is, what do you imagine a teacher would be doing for a student who does not have a learning lab?
No, I think I said in the old world, they would have to take a paper, right? You'd be giving them a paper period 2 if they weren't finished, that they might then have to finish in a learning lab, several periods later. The remote platform, I think, has made that a lot easier. They can, they could finish up during their afternoon chunk of time. They could finish up during, if you're giving that asynchronous learning time for students who haven't finished yet. If I think we have a lot of students that LRE really didn't build a lot of structure around a learning lab because of that. They're home with that unstructured time. So no, I don't know if you misheard me or if maybe I was speaking really quickly, but the learning lab, the notion of having to finish something in a learning lab only, which is kind of the old way we had to do things for extended time. This is where I think COVID has been a little bit helpful in that scenario, because they can access it on your Google Classroom when they have time later in the day.
Okay, so your suggestion is that for students who have IEPs, they complete quizzes and tests without a teacher in a Google Meet. They do it on their own time without a teacher.
Yeah, I think if they're starting it as a whole group and then they need time to finish it, I don't know why the teacher would need to be there, except if you're worried that they're cheating. I hate that word. I don't know what else to call it. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I think that would be something to discuss with a parent if you have that concern. If something's not open notebook and you're worried that they're going to use notes. I'm thinking about math. There might be problems with math with that. But yes, I think that would be the only barrier to that, is that if you're worried about fidelity with that assessment, that might be a conversation to have. There might be some TA support. Each school has set up some structure around that. I would also say, in a 71-minute period, I think it would, if they really can't finish in that amount of time, that's a really long window to be taking an assessment. If it's appropriate that they need to be, it's not a modified assessment and they're doing the whole thing, maybe you could look at some of the quantity around that if they have fluency issues.
Yeah. So sorry, I'll ask one more and then I'll stop talking. So if a quiz is really meant to be a 40-minute quiz, it was designed for what we would have done last year in 40 minutes, then can it be argued that the 71 minutes already is time and a half?
Yeah, absolutely. If they have a time and a half accommodation and they're doing that and you're available to check in, even though maybe the class is moving on to a different activity. If they have time and a half, I would definitely say that. Again, this is where knowing your learner is really important. Sustaining attention for a 71-minute long quiz is
true.
A lot, right? Yeah. For anybody. But I think, there are ways to look at that and to really ask, I guess, of the team, is this really a fluency issue? Again, if I'm giving a quiz and even a 40-minute long quiz is a pretty beefy quiz. Is it really that the kid needs extra time? And if that's the case, can I look at my quantity first? If they're demonstrating competency with, dividing fractions with like denominators, and I have a quiz with 15 of them, you can do things, where, and you'd have to look at the design of your quiz, but if they get 6, as you know, they can time out as soon as 6 are correct. You know, there's ways to do that,
Right.
where you just want to understand if they get the content or not.
Right.
If you have kids with fluency issues, I would look at reducing number, not quality, but quantity.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. So speech to text, I'm going to hit this one really quick just because it's so easy, and it's a great tool. We have the Google Classroom is Google Read and Write, and the Google Classroom has really expanded their offerings. This is what we used to call a scribe, right? So kids that really have laborious writing disabilities or output disorders with writing, maybe dysgraphia, this is on all of their Chromebooks right now, like at this moment. It is literally right under the toolbar. You go to Tools, you go down to voice typing. I just turned it off because it was on. You get this nice big microphone over here, and you're literally clicking on it, and you're speaking out loud. And for those of you, I said this earlier to my other group, who remember Dragon. Dragon was a ton of voice training for kids with articulation problems. It was a challenge. Kids had to maintain a steady volume, steady pitch, steady prosody. This platform works very well. And the only piece you really need to teach the kids about is punctuation. As you can see right now, it's literally just my stream of conscious kind of writing right now. It's just picking up on everything I say. If I want to add punctuation, comma, I just need to say it out loud, period. So that is a great feature that's offered free for all students. I'm going to switch over to Lynette real quickly, but I will tell you that the instruction for what Lynette's about to share with you is in my PowerPoint. Just simply email me and I'll share it with you. I was able to get it set up very quickly. You can see my puzzle piece up here that Lynette's going to be referring to, but really pay attention to this accommodation. We see it a lot. Lynette's going to talk to you about the read aloud feature, which I know is one I get a lot of questions about for, especially for tests, quizzes, and instructions. So Lynette, I'm going to stop sharing. Take it away. Lynette, you are muted, just so you know.
Okay, can you see that now? So I'm in a Google Doc, and the Google Read and Write toolbar is a toolbar that students can access a bunch of different tools to help them with accessing their written assignments and to help them to be able to express themselves. Now, not everyone has access to all of the features on the Google Read and Write. Everyone has access to the text-to-speech, which is the play, the pause, and the stop button. When the student sees the puzzle piece in the corner, it will not be purple. Purple indicates it's a premium version. Students get the premium version when they go through an AT referral process, and basically I help them to get the full version to basically address any of their goals and objectives through their IEP or 504. So when the student clicks on the play button, it will highlight the sentence in yellow and each word in blue.
And Lynette, I just want to clarify, just in case people got a little lost there. What Lynette is showing you right now, every single one of us has access to, and every student has access to. You don't need to email Lynette about this. The instructions on how to access it, if you're not sure, are right in my PowerPoint. You can basically type your quizzes, your tests. You can cut and paste from a Word document right into here, and everything can be read out loud to your student.
You can also use it on websites. So this is the Reading Rockets website. The puzzle, you just click on the puzzle piece and it shows up in the website. It looks a little different. This is called hover speech because you don't necessarily want it to read all of the extraneous texts in the document. You hover where you want it to read and it will start to read it. So if I click on it, it will start reading in the document online, which is great too because then you have access to articles. So it's available to all students. Now, if you don't see the puzzle piece up there, you go to this other black puzzle piece called extensions, and if you don't have it pinned to the browser bar, you can just click pin to the browser bar, and then the icon will show up. So that may be the reason why they can't see it, is because it's not pinned up there. Okay, so I've been fighting for the last 5-6 years to get the full version for everyone, but I'm glad that at least the text-to-speech is available to all students at this time.
Great, thanks, Lynette. So just again, as a reminder, the speech to text that I showed you and the text to speech that Lynette showed you is available for all learners. The extension package gives you some really cool editing, word prediction, Braille. There's a Braille feature. And again, if that's in a student's IEP, all you need to do is contact Lynette. We have a certain amount of licenses. But what I usually get 99% of the time is just, how do I get this kid a reader for their test? I can't, there are 80 students in a day. I don't understand how to do that. That is an amazing feature. I was able to do it. I'm actually not that tech savvy. And I was able to load it, follow those directions, and do it in under 4 minutes. So it's a great feature. And just to show you guys, because I think it's so cool, also free in that platform. Let me just pull my screen. Oh, you guys can't see my screen again, right? Let me just present again. Entire screen. So in that same platform, if you're in any Google Doc, so think about a note to parents that you might want to write. Maybe you're doing a little welcome back letter or an update around COVID and the remote learning schedule. All you have to do is highlight, go to your tools. This is on your platform right now. Go to translate. I cannot find, I have not looked for a language yet that I can't find. There are so many languages on here. And watch this. You literally highlight, hit translate, and your document comes up translated. Print it, send it home. It's an amazing feature. So that's a little bit outside of the IEP world, except that it lives certainly in our ability to communicate with parents. And I think it's pretty phenomenal. So that's something
Emily,
in the back pocket. Yeah.
actually, the Google Read and Write has options in there where you can change the accents. So if you go into the options, you can go in, and if you have a document that's in a different language, the accent will then be able to speak it properly in that inflection.
Yeah, so what Lynette's talking about is the actual voice you select, right? You can play with that voice you're selecting. And you can translate a document and then have the translated document read aloud to a student. So there's, if you have 20 minutes in your day somewhere, if it's in the evening, whatever, play with it. Give yourself 20 minutes to play with what they offer. It's pretty amazing. Sophie's asking about a link for the PowerPoint. If you just drop me an email, Sophie, just because I'm going to lose you guys in a minute, email me if you want the PowerPoint, and I will send it right away to whoever wants it. It has all those that information. Luke's asking about the accuracy of the translator. Well, it looked good to me, Luke. I have to assume, because it's such a frequently used toolbar, that Google has done a good job with fidelity around the translation. If you happen to speak a foreign language and you want to look at that, you can highlight it, switch it over to Spanish and read it, and see how accurate it is. Unfortunately, none of my proficiency levels are high enough where I would probably catch any errors. But so the last piece of the presentation really is just about understanding. So there are the directions right there for how to load the Google Read and Write. And then we talked about translate. The final piece is, again, our legal obligation really lives in the camp of offering. We have to provide the proverbial water for that horse to drink, right? We can't force them to drink. So again, when you're asked at a meeting, are you providing these accommodations? If you treat them as universal design, you can say with complete confidence for anybody who asks you, yes, I am. And again, they really are good practice, best practice for good instruction. I would really say you treat them as tier 1 interventions. And I think sometimes we get a little bogged down in what learners need without realizing that a lot of those are tools for best instruction. Documenting, if you have a kiddo that's really not using anything and they're doing fine, go to the team with that, get it out of their IEP, take some data for a few weeks. We can always put it back in there, but we have a lot of what I call kind of dead weight accommodations that get bumped along year to year that the child really might not need in there. and adjusting it based on your classroom data. So I had just said this, really treating those accommodations as universal design, taking your data, using UBD when you're looking at modifications. You guys are the content experts. Sometimes when we're all in a rush, I think sometimes tend to turn and say, hey, can you modify this for me based on what you know about the student? That's a really awkward situation because, our special ed folks might not know the content. So how would another human or another teacher know what you really want that child to learn at the end of a unit on cellular mitosis, right? What have you decided as the content teacher is really essential and within that student's grasp for understanding if they're reading on a 3rd grade level, let's say. I hear a lot of rumors, I guess, I don't know, about these assessments that used to exist that kind of lived in 3 silos of kind of the typical assessment, maybe a resource level assessment, and then an assessment for some significantly disabled folks who maybe are in our IA program, and that they're not really available anymore. There's nothing wrong with having kind of a cookie cutter model at different levels. I would encourage you to share the wealth as a department, look at your formative assessments and come up with some tiered interventions and testing that can be applied or tiered assessments that can be applied to different learners so that you're not reinventing the wheel. There might still be certainly some individualized adjustments made in that. But again, if you know what the core concepts are for a student who is significantly below grade level, in your unit on cellular mitosis, you're going to be teaching that unit again. You can have those kind of in your file of scaffolded tricks as a teacher. And then my final pitch is just, special ed, differentiation does not mean special education. I think sometimes we do get a little bogged down in that where, I'm doing all these things for this kid do you think we need to go to PPT? And if they're able to access your curriculum with great instructional scaffolding and differentiation, they're just like everybody else and they have strengths and weaknesses and they need great teachers like you guys are. When they're really not accessing it despite your efforts, that's really that SRBI process, right? That's when we have concerns. But if they need visuals because they're a visual learner, that just means they're a visual learner. So I am going to stop talking and I'm going to kind of scroll through these and see if I missed any biggies, but please feel free to hop on and just ask a question. Don't be shy.
I have one thing I'd like to say, Emily. The Google Read and Write Toolbar is free for all teachers to get full version anytime. So if anyone is interested in that, please feel free to contact me. I'll give you the information on how to get that. And if you want any additional training, I also have guides on the tools. It basically goes through what each one of the features does and what it looks like. And I'd be very happy to help in any of those areas that I can.
Great. And play with it. Really, give yourself some time. If you have a teenager who lives with you or anybody really over the age of 5, let's be honest, sit down with your own child or your niece or your nephew and let them play with it with you. They'll discover things that you didn't even know were on there. So Linda asked about co-writer word prediction. That's part of the special package. Lynette, you can just nod that Lynette can get. I know we have the word prediction software.
Word prediction comes in with the Google Read and Write. If we have students that need more beefy word prediction, we do have co-writer licenses.
Okay.
So that would be as part of the AT process.
Great. Sophie, you can email me for the PowerPoint. So Dino, if you go to the PowerPoint instructions, it's your puzzle piece is probably just not activated and you need to pin it. That's what I just did the other night. It was super easy. It worked really well. All right. I hope this was helpful. It was a super quick hit. Use each other. Again, I think the more you can set up as just, I do this is just part of my bag of tricks as a teacher. This is where my notes are located, showing your kids. I think, my message more as a mom, I guess, and for those of you who are parents who are also navigating this, I think everybody's just overwhelmed by the amount of stuff to manage. So I feel like we all feel like we're trying 6 ways to Sunday to share information with parents, and the parents are like, if I get one more email about a link to a Google Doc, to a classroom, to a sheet, to a team, to a homework list, I am going to lose my mind. And I get that as a mom. I have kids on Seesaw, and there was this great kind of spoof going around at the beginning of the year. I don't know if you guys saw it, with a teacher talking about like the Planet Purple plan, and just check the Zing hopper on the Doodledorf. Like, I definitely feel like that as a parent sometimes. And for us as teachers, like, it's so clear. We're like, we're providing a map. We're working so hard. And I think just patience with everybody right now is so critical. We have done a phenomenal job in West Hartford. I think you guys have been fantastic. Again, I can't believe how far we have come since March 13th. And we'll continue to evolve, but reach out, ask questions. The more you can knock off and treat as universal, the less you have to scramble every time you get a new referral or a new kiddo, and everybody in your classroom will benefit from it. 304, whew, not bad. I will hang out for a minute, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. It was an honor. Have a great day.